Director Rowe, can you explain why the shooter's drone worked?
Because there was no counter-UAS present, sir.
Well, you had a drone system, but you had bandwidth problems. The bandwidth apparently was adequate for the shooter's drone, but not for the Secret Service. Can you explain that?
I have no explanation for it, sir.
We also know that in a military context, electronic warfare or jamming capabilities are commonly used on the battlefield. Does the Secret Service have jamming capabilities or drones?
We have drones, sir, and when it comes to, I have to be very careful about how I answer this one in an open forum. What I can tell you is that we have technical security measures, sir, to address, I think, what you're asking me.
Well, the question is, can you take down a suspicious drone? Because this can be used not only for surveillance by the shooter, which obviously it was here, but also drones can be weaponized and be used as a threat to the president, or in this case, the President Trump. Do you have the capacity to stop a weaponized drone?
What I will tell you, sir, is that we have technical security measures that we utilize at permanently protected sites. We also have the ability, in a limited fashion, at temporary sites. What I can tell you is that on this day, the counter-UAS system had technical difficulties and did not go operational until after 5 o'clock.
So in this case, the shooter had a rifle, but somebody who wanted to kill a president for a former president or a candidate for president would not need a rifle. They could use a drone, correct?
It is a potential threat vector.
So this individual was identified as a suspicious person. Can you explain to us when a suspicious person becomes identified as a threat?
Well, I think it's also when a weapon or some other dangerous item is then presented.
A rangefinder would not render someone a threat as opposed to somebody who was under suspicion?
I think the rangefinder is what initially brought him to the attention of local law enforcement.
And why would the president be allowed to take to the stage while a suspicious person had been identified and before the Secret Service or local law enforcement were able to investigate the circumstances?
So at that time, Senator, suspicion had not risen to the level of threat or imminent harm.
Well, you didn't. Ultimately, that suspicious person did become a threat. Do you think if the president had been asked not to take the stage and during the time it took to investigate, to eliminate that suspicion, that wouldn't that have been the appropriate way to deal with it?
Senator, it certainly is one way to do it. This is a challenge for law enforcement in general, is that being able to, you identify somebody that comes to your attention and you're trying to determine what are their intentions. This is a challenge for law enforcement. The individual came to the attention for suspicion. He's on the outer perimeter adjacent to the secured site. Law enforcement is circulating for him. But again, without additional information, at that point, we're not rising to the level yet where perhaps we should pull him off or delay him.
And I'm just suggesting that maybe, just maybe, President Trump's appearance should have been delayed while that suspicion could be adequately investigated. But I've always thought of the Secret Service as the best of the best when it comes to their willingness to put themselves in harm's way to protect the life of their person they are detailed to. And I think you described the very rigorous process by which people are screened. And I think you mentioned the 2% standard. People who are interested in serving, only a very small fraction of those individuals are actually accepted in the Secret Service because of the high standards that your agency has. But explain to me why the Secret Service, being an elite law enforcement agency, would delegate to local law enforcement or others who did not meet that same 2% standard. In other words, isn't that something that Secret Service should have covered as opposed to delegating it to local law enforcement?
So, Senator, again, this is where I went back to earlier when I said it was a failure to challenge our assumptions. We assumed that the state and locals had it. By no means do I want to diminish the commitment, and I'm sure you agree. State and local law enforcement do their jobs every day and protect the communities that you represent.
No doubt about it.
So I think what we made an assumption that there was going to be uniformed presence out there, that there would be sufficient eyes to cover that there was going to be counter sniper teams in the AGR building, and I can assure you that we're not going to make that mistake again. Moving forward, I've directed our Office of Protective Operations that when our counter snipers are up, their counter snipers are up, and they're on the roof as well. And we do this all the time with our colleagues in the New York City Police Department when we cover the United Nations General Assembly, and so that is our TTP moving forward.
Director Rowe, I would just submit to you that those assumptions can be lethal.